The Disney Wish, a beautiful new ship, but I want to ask Disney, what were you thinking? More on that in a minute. Alrighty, the Disney Wish, the latest of the 5 cruise ships that Disney has put out. A beautiful new ship, a clean ship. Several things very, very good about it. Just absolutely beautiful and clean. I love several aspects of it, and I plan on doing a separate video about that. But there's so many things where I look at it and I'm asking Disney, what were you thinking when you actually designed this specific ship? So I'm going to go over about 6 items where I'm speaking to those various items that I believe they kind of missed the boat. What were you thinking? Well, the first thing that I want to talk about is the outdoor track. Well, I'm going to do a separate video related to that outdoor track that I'm probably going to release about the same time as this video. But on the other ships, when you're going on the outdoor track, you're looking at the sea, you're at a level where you're going around one level of the ship. Well, on the Disney Wish, for some reason, there's no place for a jogger really to jog around or walk around a single level the same way like you can on the Dream and the Fantasy and the Magic and the Wonder. And I miss that. You have to go on deck 4, go up, and you have to go up 2 sets of steps related to the track. So let's just face it, the outdoor track, it's missing. And what you do have there and what you're calling that, it's not really an outdoor track. Be careful. Okay, the second item that I want to address are the elevators. If you've been on the Disney Wish, you know those elevators, I believe there's 2 banks of 8 elevators. One in the forward section, one in the aft section. These elevators are, in my opinion, for the size of the ship, fairly small. They may be adequate, maybe they're in comparison to the Dream and the Fantasy, maybe they're similar in size. But think about the Dream and the Fantasy. You have 3 banks of elevators, while on the Wish, there's only 2 banks of elevators. I think this creates a need for people to use steps more, to kind of say, I'm not using those elevators at all. To me, that is an issue. Another thing about those elevators are those buttons. What we found a lot of the time is when we would walk into the elevators, we would back up, and if you were a person that was backing up near the buttons, they were touch sensitive, meaning you didn't have to touch the buttons. You could be near the buttons and it would set them off. Kind of like Elf, kind of like the way he did all those. You had the feeling that that happened from time to time in these elevators. Not a good thing. They need to do something to make them less sensitive, no doubt about it. Okay, the last thing that I wanted to talk about related to the elevators, related to getting up to Quiet Cove, that area that's contained up in deck 13 and 14 of the ship. At the aft end of the ship, what you would have to do is go to that elevator bank. There's 8 elevators in place, yes, but there's only 2 of those 8 elevators that would go up to the Quiet Cove area, that area up on deck 13. Now, we have other areas related to the adult, other issues related to those adult areas I'm going to talk about in a moment, but even getting up there sometimes required you to go up to a point and then take a set of steps up, because it was hard to get that elevator, or the 2 elevators, going up to deck 13, because it was only the 2 elevators, and there was not a special button that we could see that you would push that would take you up there. So you need to think about, really, Disney, what were you thinking when you put these elevators together with those buttons the way you did it, and what you did here on the aft section getting up to the adult area in deck 13? Oh my, the third area, the adult area. Disney, what were you thinking? I'm going to divide this up into really 2 different sections. The outdoor section there on deck 13 that kind of goes up to 14, as well as all other areas of the ship. So let's start with that outdoor area. As I just talked about, getting that elevator up to deck 13 can be a chore, first and foremost. And then when you get off deck 13, you're going to have to go to the starboard side and go towards the back. You can't go on the port side and go towards the back. So as you get off and you're going towards the back of the ship, you're walking past some of the chairs. To me, this whole area is kind of congested. It's kind of makes you feel claustrophobic somewhat when you compare it to maybe the Disney Dream and Fantasy. to where there's satellite falls and things are kind of spread out in a very nice way. Well, in this specific area, you're walking around past these chairs, and as you get towards the very aft of the ship, that's where you get to the Cove Bar. You also get to the little pool thing there that when you look online at the Wish, they make you think, hey, this is grand, this is something that's not crowded. It was always crowded. That hot tub, that pool, that little bar area, it was always crowded. And you know, it left a little bit to be desired. But the second thing back there was the Cove Cafe. On every other ship, I absolutely love the Cove Cafe. It's an area where on all the other ships you can go, of course, get your coffee. You want to pay a little bit extra, you can get your coffee and other drinks. But if you want a treat, if you want a croissant, if you want that chocolate pillow, if you want one of the other treats, you can go to the Cove Cafe, you know, through the afternoon on the other ships and get that. Well, on this one, not there. The Cove Cafe here is completely different. It's out of the way. It's out of place in my opinion. And because of that, and really because you have so many other options, there is an issue. But that's fine. Thankfully, there are those other options if you want coffee. After my one visit there, I never went back there. I don't get the coffee where you pay extra for most of the time, but I might if there was a little treat there. In this case, I looked at it. I looked around the area. I left that quiet cove area because it was not quiet and it was way too crowded, and we just left it and didn't spend any time there. So Disney, related to this adult portion of the ship, what were you thinking? Alrighty, the second portion of Disney, what were you thinking related to the Wish? It was related to the bars. Or maybe not really the bars, they were spread out all over the ship. The bayou, I love the bayou, I love the area it was in. But if I'm saying related to some of the other areas, for example, Luna. What's going on with Luna? When I'm speaking to the area that's outside of Luna, I believe it's the Keg and Compass, those types of areas. When I'm looking at all of that, what I'm seeing in the adult area is it's an adult area where the kids are in the middle of it a lot of the time. So my kind of concern here is on all the other ships, there's kind of a segregated area for the adult areas, for those nighttime bars. The rest of the time, I don't care. So yeah, when you're on those other ships, when you're on the Dream and the Fantasy, when you're on the Magic, and when you're on the Wonder, there's an area for you to go to that's kind of separate and apart from the other portions of the ship. I know lots of kids on this ship. Kids are going to walk in from time to time, but where the elevators were placed in Luna and where Luna was actually at, things, you know, the nighttime game shows, the nighttime meet your or match your mate, and those type of shows, just totally out of place. And I'm not saying that kids aren't going to be walking into the areas where bars are, but when you're on the Fantasy, when you're on the Dream, when they're segregated, when you actually have to go down a path to get in those places, kind of like the Tube and places like that on those other ships, people are getting off elevators on the Disney Wish on decks 3 and 4, and they're going to be able to go in and see Luna. They're going to be able to pop their head in and see what's going on. And even though there's not that big of a crazy adult thing going on, I believe it needs to be segregated. And it for the adult portion of it, for those of us adults who were cruising without children, it really was something that kind of bothered me in those places. Didn't make them near as enjoyable as those areas that are contained in all 4 of the other ships that Disney has. So bottom line, I'm just going to say Disney, related to these areas, related to adult specific nighttime areas, what were you thinking? Add that in with that quiet cove area. And all in all, when I'm looking at this cruise ship, you can tell where they've probably taken the concept of making it less adult areas and a lot more family and children areas, and that's fine. But what I also kind of figured out related to that is maybe this ship isn't so much for me. Alrighty, the next area, I guess this is area number 4, if you want to be numbering these, relates to the shops and the shopping on this ship. Disney ships have never been the same, let's say, as Royal Caribbean. Royal Caribbean very much so has that main area you walk down, has a ton of different shops, and they might have their own Royal shops. Even though the last cruise we went on last summer on Royal Harmony of the Seas, those shops were kind of missing as well. But on this Disney Wish ship, there was just way too much emphasis on the high-end things, high-end watches, high-end jewelry. When you're over there near the bayou, that cool area where you could go get a drink, or where there was animation classes, where there were other things taking place, right next to that, to me, was a useless, and I mean very useless, shopping area. So very often you would walk by that and those people in there looked bored. Those people in there looked like, what are we doing here? Because there was nobody in those watch shops, nobody in those jewelry shops. And honestly, I don't like those shops. I do like going into the Disney shops. Yes, there was a Disney shop. I think it was up on deck 5, is where, it was either 4 or 5. I believe it was deck 5 in the center of the ship, where that Disney store, and it really was the only shop for Disney. Now there was another one that was a shop up near the outside of the buffet, going outside to where the pools are as well. Dory's Forget-Me-Nots, I think, was the name of that. But as far as all of the adult shops and all of those useless things, Disney, what were you thinking? Really, what were you thinking? And it just seems like it's something that takes away from that Disney magic, putting that garbage in there. Now, number 5 is probably going to be controversial to some of you that have been on this ship, because when we were going on, I was looking forward to the main dining rooms. Of course, if you've ever been on Disney, or if you haven't, you go from one dining room to the next nightly. You keep the same staff that move with you to those new dining rooms. So the first one we went to was the World of Marvel. And I'll stop you right there and say that's the only one we went to. And there's a reason it's the only one we went to. But we went into the World of Marvel. We're post-COVID, so to speak. But we were crammed in there. What I have seen in the World of Marvel, we went on day 1 to a lunch right after we got on the ship in Arendelle in the Frozen restaurant. And it was hard to get down the rows to get to your table. It was so crammed in there. It's like you're in a school lunchroom and you're just crammed in and there's no room between you and the next person. If you're there with your family and a bunch of people, it's probably great. If you're there as a couple, forget about it. And so Arendelle taught us one thing, and it made us uncomfortable. When we got to 1923, when we got to Worlds of Marvel and went in and sat down, we had the worst service we'd ever had. Looking back at it, we should have asked to switch tables to somewhere else. There was someone next to us, and I mean right next to us. There's this much room in this long table. Picture a school lunchroom where somebody is essentially sitting right next to you. There was a child that was sick next to us, and the whole family looked like they were kind of sick as well. We should have asked to be moved, but that first night gave us a bad taste in our mouth. The food was not good. The service was terrible. And the main server, I think, could tell this. They came over and asked, is there something we can do? And it was like, well, no, it's just this environment. We went to look at 1923. 1923 maybe would have been a little bit different, not as crammed in. But we know 2 of the 3 main dining rooms, that World of Marvel, that Frozen restaurant, would have been crammed in. And then we just decided we're not going to 1923. Thankfully, this cruise ship does have some of the best quick service dining available on any of the Disney cruise ships. So that was a big bonus. Now, as far as the room service, it was a little suspect. To me, it wasn't as great as some of the other ships. But all in all, on the rotational dining and the way you design these tables to cram everybody in there, Disney, what were you thinking? All right, and this last one, number 6, it's a little petty. You may say some of the other ones were as well. Maybe, maybe not. But this last one is we started seeing things on this specific cruise ship that were more canned in nature. And the thing that I'm talking about is animation class. We loved going to animation class. We've been on the Dream, we've been on the Fantasy, we've been on the Magic, to where there was somebody that would be in the front of the room. They would have their board, their piece of paper, they would be drawing and speaking to it, and they were funny. And what you would end up drawing might have been looking like Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse, or it might have been something so terrible, but it was always an enjoyable experience. On the Disney Wish, I don't know if it's because of staffing or if all ships are going this direction. We're going on the Disney Wonder at the end of April, so we're going to soon find out if this is the situation or not. But when we went in to do animation, we got our piece of paper, we got our pencil, and then they put a video on it. It's like I felt like you were putting a VCR in, pushing the button, and they were going over, and there was this true animator talking about how to draw this thing, and then the person would stop, the cast member that was on the ship would stop and kind of talk through it. But it really, honestly, I think we went to either 1 or 2 sessions of this. What I found is this was not an enjoyable experience like the one where it's led by somebody. So I'm hoping this is not something that is coming in the future on all ships. I'm hoping it was just something that was momentary. But if it is, I'm highly disappointed. Disney, what were you thinking? Well, alrighty, folks, that's everything that I really have to say about Disney. What were you thinking? What were you thinking when you put these things together, when you design this ship, when you design some of these specific items? There's been a lot of talk online, well, maybe they could learn on the next ship. Well, it appears, that it's the same design or similar design. By the time that's going on, I'm afraid that ship is sailed, so to speak, and they've already decided what they're doing on the new ships. I don't like many of the changes, especially when I'm thinking about the way that track worked. There's no way to redesign that if you already have the design in place. I'm also just highly disappointed in the main dining rooms. I love going to the main dining rooms, but there's got to be a separation somewhat. It was almost a little shock. We've been on 3 other cruises post-COVID, and we didn't feel like so crammed in as we did on the Disney Wish. There was space there to give to make these rooms a little bit bigger, to pull these tables a little bit further apart. Disney, come on, what were you thinking? Well, alrighty, folks, thanks for watching. We're going on another cruise on the Disney Wonder in April. We're also going to post other videos related to the Disney Wish, as well as I have some content out there related to the Disney Dream that's coming soon. So please subscribe. We'll see you next time. Until then, happy meandering.